Have you noticed that in some areas, you can't even apply for a passport anymore? And in other places, even if you have a passport and a valid work visa, sorry, you still can't leave the country. No particular reason, you just can't go.
Recently, a disheartening topic has become a hot issue in China again. Ordinary citizens in the lower and middle classes are finding it harder to leave the country. In several regions, passport services have been suspended. What's going on? Lately, several areas in China have stopped processing passport applications. Places like Tieling in Liaoning, Meihekou in Jilin, Fangzheng in Heilongjiang, Gaozheng in Shijiazhuang, Liaoyungang in Jiangsu, and parts of Guizhou are among them. Why have these places stopped issuing passports? It turns out that many people who get passports and visas leave and never come back. As a result, these areas have been labeled sensitive regions by the government. Now it's becoming increasingly difficult for individuals to apply for passports. The trend of going abroad for work has completely shifted. It used to be about hesitating over whether to go or not. Now it's about wanting to leave but being unable to. I remember when I came to South Korea a year ago, people asked me, "Is working abroad still worth it? The pay seems a bit low." I told them, if you're thinking about it, go for it quickly. Policies might change someday, and you might not be able to leave at all. Look at this, just 1 year later, and my prediction has come true. In recent years, rumors of passport restrictions and blocked travel have been circulating, especially since post-pandemic exit policies became stricter. Some say it's to prevent a wave of emigration, while others claim it's just temporary policy adjustments. But for ordinary people, these explanations feel like hollow excuses. For those dreaming of seeking opportunities abroad, the path has suddenly become much harder, or completely out of reach. Within a year, people went from debating whether to go work overseas to realizing that they can't even leave the country. This includes parents wanting better education for their children, young people seeking overseas jobs, and those simply yearning to experience a different life abroad, only to find themselves shut out. This situation brings back memories of decades ago, when China's economy hasn't yet taken off. Life was tough for most people, and the thought of going abroad was nearly impossible for the average citizen. Back then, only the Chinese Communist Party elite or a handful of professionals with special missions had the privilege to leave. Now it feels like those days have returned overnight. Many people in China now understand that in the eyes of the government, they're just chives waiting to be harvested, or a human resource mine. During the years of false economic prosperity, the government knew that those who left might eventually return, so they were more lenient with travel. But now they know that if people leave, they may never come back, and they could take significant wealth with them. The reality is, the government's increasing restrictions on overseas travel reflect the current economic downturn in China. Let's take a closer look at some of the recent key developments.
Have you ever heard of a company paying its employees a negative salary? I just saw some news today. A public listed bank actually reported that in the third quarter, the wages it paid to its employees were negative. This means that the bonuses and other amounts employees had to return were higher than the salaries they were supposed to receive for that quarter. Isn't that a bit outrageous? At first, I thought this couldn't be true, so I looked it up and checked their past financial reports. To my surprise, it's real. In the third quarter, the bank reported a negative 31.27 million yuan in cash payments to employees. For comparison, during the same quarter last year, they paid out 320 million yuan in wages. This year, instead of paying salaries, they effectively reclaimed 350 million yuan. Take a look at this chart. It's astonishing how much they clawed back. This reveals two key points. One, the bank is under immense operational pressure. Otherwise, they wouldn't go to such lengths to risk upsetting their employees by reclaiming wages. Two, their past bonuses and wages were clearly inflated. Otherwise, how could they recover billions like this? These numbers are staggering. Looking ahead to the next few years, from 2025 to 2029, it's clear things are going to be tough.
Paying out over 300 million in salaries one year, then taking back over 30 million the next. That's a dramatic shift.
被打脸了啊，真的是被打脸。
I've been hit hard by reality, absolutely humiliated. I'm 37 years old, a graduate from a top-tier university, and yet my family's monthly expenses of over 20,000 yuan have completely overwhelmed me. Both my wife and I are currently unemployed, and now I feel like I can't even scrape together 1,000 yuan. It's really difficult. I used to earn 35,000 yuan a month. My wife made around 12,000 yuan. Together, our combined income, including bonuses, was over 40,000 yuan or even 50,000 yuan. Paying the mortgage, eating out, covering our child's tutoring fees, it all felt manageable. But reality hit so suddenly. Now both of us are unemployed. In late August this year, my company cut salaries and laid off staff. After working as an AI project director for 8 years, I never imagined I'd also be let go. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. And as if things couldn't get worse, my wife's outsourcing company disbanded her project, and she has been laid off too. I've been trying hard to find work, but reality is harsh. People say once you're over 35, you're considered too old. But I'm only 37. Is that really too old? Midlife, it feels like there's no way out. When we bought this house, we borrowed over 100,000 yuan from friends and family. The house cost us 5.5 million yuan. And with renovations and taxes, the total came to over 6 million. Now, though, the house's market value has dropped to just over 4 million. Even at that price, it's unsellable. That's just how things are right now. Honestly, I don't know what to do.
The AI project director's story highlights a risky financial gamble. He spent 6 million yuan on a house, borrowing over 100,000 from friends, and taking a bank loan that likely covered 70% of the cost, around 3.6 million yuan. This suggests that he had less than 2 million cash initially. With a family income of roughly 50,000 yuan per month, taking on a mortgage that required 30,000 yuan in monthly payments was extremely high risk. His investment strategy assumed two key conditions: that housing prices would always rise and salaries would continue to increase. However, as soon as his job situation changed or property values declined, his financial stability crumbled. The current situation is precisely the situation he didn't foresee or believe could happen. The root of his problem lies in his misjudgment of China's overall economic landscape. As a professional in a technical field, his decision reflects not just a lack of financial literacy, but also the effects of long-term exposure to overly optimistic and misleading domestic news. He has likely believed in the perpetually strong economic outlook promoted within China, assuming that housing prices would bounce back. If he had access to accurate international information, he might have avoided this disaster. His case is far from isolated. It represents a broader pattern among China's so-called middle class. Recent waves of layoffs in the country have been more severe than ever before. For example, reports have emerged on Chinese social media that home appliance giant Hisense is planning a mass wave of layoffs. The cuts are said to be implemented in 2 phases, before and after the Chinese New Year. The company is expected to announce the first wave of layoffs next week, sparking widespread discussion online. Allegedly, this downsizing will reduce Hisense's workforce from 110,000 employees, which is 20 to 30%. Hisense employees have posted half and half. The list will be out next week, with 30% overall layoffs in 2 waves. Another insider from Hisense Home Appliances wrote, about 30,000 layoffs, so I've heard. Others added that recent graduates just 6 months ago have already signed resignation agreements, with layoffs targeting both interns and older employees. Publicly available data shows the former chairman of Hisense Home Appliances, Dai Huizhong, recently stepped down, citing retirement age and personal choice. Gao Yuling, the company's financial controller and chief accountant, is rumored to be taking over as chairman. The layoffs reportedly focus on the home appliance division of Hisense Group. One analysis speculates that if the rumored 30,000 layoffs are accurate, this would rank as one of the largest layoffs among global tech companies in recent years. This isn't the first time Hisense has faced such rumors. In early 2020, a report of a 10,000-employee layoff shocked China's home appliance industry. At the time, Hisense publicly admitted to layoffs but denied the scale, describing it as a routine performance-based adjustment. As of now, Chinese media outlets have sought confirmation from Hisense regarding the latest rumors, but the company has not responded. Although Hisense Group has yet to formally respond, Chinese netizens are already in an uproar. Even a leading company like Hisense is laying off workers now? It really is an industry winter. How many more homes will face mortgage defaults over this? One user from Shanghai questioned, when a foreign company lays off employees, they're often leaving the market. But why are state-owned and private companies in China doing the same? A user from Beijing commented, the situation is truly unprecedented, and everyone's feelings are complicated. The economic downturn in China is hitting hard, leaving many struggling not with questions of quality of life, but with basic survival. Meanwhile, the Chinese government continues to tighten restrictions on citizens seeking opportunities abroad. At the same time, immigration policies in other countries are also tightening, adding more pressure on those still capable of leaving China.
Friends, Canada is no longer offering 10-year visas. This might sound like a broad statement, but it specifically refers to the visitor visa, which covers categories like tourist, business, dependent, and family visit visas. Starting November 6th, Canada will no longer issue visas based on the expiration date of an applicant's passport. The automatic 10-year visa many used to rely on is gone. Now, visa officers have more discretion. They will determine the visa's duration based on factors such as your reason for traveling, your connections to Canadian society, and the necessity of your trip. Whether you're planning to travel, study, or immigrate, my advice is to act quickly. Opportunities like these will only become harder to secure in the future.
In addition to Canada, Japan has also tightened visa requirements for major Chinese cities like Guangzhou and Shenzhen, a development that was previously unheard of.
This morning, I tried applying for a Japanese tourist visa, but I was denied. Why? Because Guangzhou and Shenzhen are no longer eligible for visa-free entry. In the past, residents of Guangzhou and Shenzhen could use a simplified process without providing financial proof. Now, that's no longer the case. You need to provide bank statements and social security documentation. It's become harder and harder to visit Japan.
Japan's stricter visa policies for major Chinese cities like Guangzhou and Shenzhen reflect its concern over China's sharply deteriorating economy. Another factor is the growing backlash against incidents involving patriotic trolls and overly zealous nationalists known as Wu Mao and Little Pinks. Their disruptive behavior in Japan have harmed the reputation of ordinary Chinese people, both those traveling to Japan and those living there. Ironically, while the Chinese government continues to push hate-filled narratives domestically, it recently introduced unilateral visa-free entry for Japanese citizens. Japan's decision to tighten visa requirements for Chinese nationals is a pointed response, highlighting the disconnect between the two countries and symbolically rebuking Beijing. As economic conditions tighten in response to China's economic decline, visa restrictions are making it harder for Chinese citizens to seek opportunities abroad. Back home, many people are jobless, with some reportedly dying from exposure and starvation on the streets. While the government remains indifferent to these struggles, it's been busy investing in superficial image projects. For example, reports have surfaced of authorities in multiple regions dressing roadside trees in elaborate sweaters to create an illusion of prosperity. Netizens have criticized this as wasteful and heartless, calling out the government for its misplaced priorities amid the suffering of ordinary citizens. Since October, videos and photos have been circulating across China, showing large city trees adorned with bright, intricately made sweaters. These tree sweaters are not just colorful, but also feature patterns, ornaments, and even cartoon designs, suggesting they were meticulously crafted. Unofficial reports online suggest that cities such as Beijing, Changchun, Dongying, Bingzhou, Linyi, Qingdao, Chongqing, Shanghai, Hefei, and Wuhan have embraced this practice, covering trees across the nation in elaborate knitwear. Beijing state media reported that these sweaters are expensive, with some requiring a week of hand knitting and using up to 200 pounds of yarn for just 5 trees. The media claimed that local businesses voluntarily created these sweaters, but many netizens suspect the initiative is orchestrated by the government's propaganda departments, given the scale of the operation. Criticism has been swift and harsh, with many labeling the act as meaningless waste. Some pointed out the irony of trees being dressed in elaborate attire, while many impoverished people in China lack basic clothing and food. Viral videos show desperate scenes in former manufacturing hubs like Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Dongguan, Jinhua, and Kunshan, where unemployed workers wander the streets, and people die from hunger or exposure. Authorities have reportedly worked hard to suppress such news. One particularly striking image shows a homeless man in Zhumajian, Henan, wrapping himself in plastic bags to stay warm because he couldn't afford winter clothes. The stark contrast between the lavishly dressed trees and the harsh realities of the poor has prompted a wave of outrage online. Many have condemned the government, with some politically lamenting they can afford extravagant for trees but not for people. This situation has even drawn comparisons to ancient times. During the Sui dynasty, which ruled from 581 to 618, Emperor Yang's extravagant display of wealth, including wrapping trees in silk, left foreign envoys questioning why resources weren't used to clothe the impoverished. Shortly after, the dynasty collapsed. A young Chinese vlogger recently went viral for his satirical video, "I Raised a Group of Pigs." In the video, which has been banned within China but continues to spread internationally, the vlogger uses pigs as a metaphor for ordinary citizens under the Chinese government's control. I raised a group of pigs. For those who are disobedient, I pick out some obedient ones, feed them better pig feed, and assign them the task of dealing with the others, keeping them in line and preventing trouble. When raising pigs, my first principle in educating piglets is to suppress their individuality and values, teaching only obedience and submission so they grow up to be model pigs. My house, car, wife, kids, and even my mistresses are all funded by selling pork. Occasionally, when I have extra money, I might fix up the pigsty to improve their sense of happiness. I secretly take 100 yuan worth of meat from the pigs and occasionally spend 10 yuan on them. The pigs are so grateful, thinking their welfare is excellent, unaware that their benefits come from their own flesh. Recently, the birth rate of piglets has dropped significantly, with many pigs complaining that life has become too hard, and beginning to wonder how even the most obedient pigs in the world are becoming difficult to raise. In another video titled "Push Them Further," the blogger addresses the dangers of passive compliance. He likens the regime to robbers, warning that if people keep surrendering without resistance, their exploitation will only worsen. He urges viewers to consider ways to escape the system, or at the very least, stop contributing to it by having children who will inherit the same cycle of oppression. The vlogger stated, "What do you do if someone comes to rob your house? If you don't want to be robbed, you have two options. Either you fight back or you run. But you can't win in a fight and you can't escape. So what do? You hand over the money and get it over with. At least by paying now, you can ensure some temporary peace. However, you understand the nature of bandits. Even if you pay for peace today, they'll come back tomorrow. It's a bottomless pit. As long as you stay in this house, you won't be able to escape." The further it goes, the greedier they become. Although compromising now may seem like the lowest cost option, in the long run, you'll be completely drained. So, right now, you must rack your brain and do everything you can to help your children escape. But if even your children can't escape, then the only thing to do is to stop having children altogether. You say I'm unwilling to accept reality, that I won't resign myself. Wake up! You have to. No miracles are going to happen. Why? Because everyone is like you, waiting for someone else to act. Do you understand? Bandits can run rampant because everyone is waiting. In a video titled "Without Trust, There's No Stability," this vlogger exposes the lies propagated by the government, which have eroded public trust. He says, when you're saving money, they promise you everything, but when you try to withdraw it, they make it as difficult as possible. That's why fewer people are willing to invest their money. When attracting investors, they paint a rosy picture, but when projects are implemented, people realize it was all empty promises. That's why fewer investors come. He continues, when selling insurance, they make all kinds of guarantees about payouts, but when it comes time to claim, they refuse to pay for this and that, so fewer people are buying insurance. When asking for charity donations, they call for everyone to give generously, but then they use the money for personal luxuries. Naturally, fewer people are willing to donate again. When court hearings are no longer public and judgments become blatantly unfair, fewer people believe in the legal system. They say life is beautiful and fulfilling, but people are treated like crops, harvested again and again. So fewer people are having children. Because everything they've said from start to finish has been a lie, those who see the truth and have means to leave have already left. The vlogger adds, speaking the truth gets you scolded, but since 2022, fewer people are criticizing me, while more and more are liking and saving my posts. Justice is in people's hearts. Humans may act, but the heavens are watching. It's not that there's no accountability, it's just that the time hasn't come yet. We're seeing more and more Chinese citizens awaken to reality, with a growing number daring to speak out. Perhaps the wait for change won't be for much longer.